We're back here.
We're back again.
In our wonderful set, which has a leaned display.
I mean, it looks pretty good considering, even in the worst situation, a display is great value.
So, yes, we're still building here.
Yes.
But many of you requested, and I thought it was a good idea, is what do you want to happen with the Scions? Now, I want to be clear, we're talking about this after the latest MSQ. Endwalker is done and done.
Done. Completely. We're finished.
So there were some things revealed in the final part of the MSQ, which if you haven't seen or played... You should, because we're going to talk about it a little bit in here. But what we wanted to do is, what do you want to... The question was, what do you guys want to have happen to the Scions? It's a good question. Because for many of them, the Hydaelyn Zodiac era is... That story's done, but a lot of the Scions story was done as well.
Yes.
And they all survived. Interestingly enough.
Some perhaps when they shouldn't have.
Maybe.
But they did.
So we've got notes. I've done my notes. You've done yours on your phone.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do to make it a bit more interesting and to not to annoy anybody, because I think we both agree, don't hate any of the Scions.
No, it's like love to just slightly less love for me.
Correct. Yeah, so bear that in mind. We are going to go from worst to best in the order of really like all of them. Okay, but obviously we'll have different ones. We haven't seen each other's list, so we don't know what's on them.
No, we just did them.
Yeah, so in each turn... One of us will say our worst one, and the other one will obviously talk about theirs, and then you can say where it is on your list, and then vice versa. So we'll do it that way. Right, so are you ready?
Yeah.
Because people might get really... Don't get mad.
I know which one this is going to be as well, I can tell already.
So am I going first?
Yeah.
Okay, so my least favourite is the way I'm going to phrase it, and what I want to have happen to him is Urianger.
Oh, okay. Mine's the same.
Interesting.
I thought yours was going to be a different one.
Okay, we'll save it to who you thought it was going to be. But yes, mine is Urianger. So, I chose this one, so I'll start this one, I guess. His story is so done, and has been... I mean, the only thing that was dangling, and I didn't even think it really needed addressing, but I think it was more fan service and everything, was the Moon Breeder situation.
Yeah.
He kept bringing it up. He was still moping about it. Even though it was all the way back in A Realm Reborn, like it was so long ago, and they wrapped that up and done. And honestly, he's been backseat now for a really long time.
For sure.
Yeah, for me, he's like in Stormblood, he's gone for all of it, and then he rocks up into the desert and brings you the fucking tools to save the world, and then he fucks off again.
Yeah.
And then he's off with the Loporrits, he's off with the fairies and Shadowbringers. He's in the fairy world. He always finds a way to disappear and be kind of there when you need him and then gone. As if they haven't really got something for him to do.
Yes. Unless he's got to turn up with some MacGuffin. Yeah,
he's Mr. MacGuffin. It's exactly what it is. He just turns up with like, hey, I can do this, or I can manage this. Like, it's funny. It's like, oh, Urianger with Loporrits. Yeah, I get it. It's really funny and it's cool. But it actually wasn't that funny there because he just accepted it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, this is fine. I've just lived with fairies for like 2 years or whatever. Like, I'm fine.
Bunnies, by comparison, is pretty tame.
Yeah, for Urianger, he's like, yeah, this is cool. So, having said that, so, like, for me, he hasn't got anything left, and he seems to have resolved his situations. Now, we do know, obviously, again, now we're coming back to the MSQ stuff, is they've pulled a bit of a bait and switch. We did know they were going to separate the Scions some way, somehow.
Yeah.
And now we know the teams. It's 3 teams, interestingly enough.
Well, 2 teams, one, I guess, wild card.
One who are like, I don't know, he needs to go, so let's throw him somewhere.
He's just there for some reason.
Yeah, we'll get to him. But him and Daddy have made a team that are also travelling to Trollolol. Probably to side with a different contender for the throne.
Yeah.
Is kind of what the implication is of what's going on, but of course we don't know. But my thoughts with Urianger is, I think Urianger is really capable now of going away from the Scions entirely. I don't. Obviously, that's not going to happen in Dawntrail because he's coming along, but it's what I would like to see. That's the whole point of this. What I would like to see is him really separate away. He's old, he's wizened, he's got great information. He doesn't really join in much anyway these days. And move into not a consultant role, but I want them to find him something like the Studium or something like that, where Urianger ascends to an almost a position of power, but like a logical power.
Yeah.
As this... It's hard for me to say this because he's such a morally flexible person when he thinks he knows better. which also could lead to really interesting stories down the line. Is like, why? I could see a story even developing in 3 expansions time, where Urianger has moved into this kind of role, and it's not quite really good.
Okay, yeah.
He's made some decisions along the way, like he has done with the Warriors of Darkness, and he has done with Graha, or the Exarch in the past, where he's like withheld certain information because it's for the greater good. And the Scions turn over was like, Urianger, we love you. And then it's like, Urianger, you did this?
Yeah.
They uncover that there's something wrong. There's something not right that's important, and Urianger is behind it. Either that, this is going to apply to someone else as well, is he either needs a completely fresh story arc, which could happen in this new world. But I really hope in that regard, they don't dip into his moral flexibility. Because he kind of said, we're not doing this ever again in Endwalker.
That realistically was his whole character arc, was that he went through that. And it's interesting you call it moral flexibility, which is not what I would call it. It's like, he's always been very moral, because it's all about the greater good. He's just a very ends justify the means kind of guy.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a different approach. But certainly he's gone through that evolution to where at Endwalker he's like, he doesn't want to do that anymore, and he suffers from having done it.
Yeah.
Costing the life of Membrida, costing the life of Minfilia, and everyone else. So yeah, I wouldn't want to tread that old ground. I would agree.
Yeah, if they carry on with, let's say he goes to New World and there's something that takes his fancy, or certainly with these contenders for the throne coming in, he's like, well, that guy has a point, and I actually know something you don't know. So it's the same sort of story again.
Yeah.
That way, I don't want that to go.
No.
If they're going to do something in Dawn Trail, I'd like something really new to sink his teeth into. Or something quite dramatic, like, not memory loss, really, but like having to deal with not being able to recount that information. I know Guild Wars 2 has toyed with the ideas of disease, like an Urianger who is degenerating in some way, and we have to solve it, and you kind of see this weakening of that character, who's been so strong. Like, Urianger is a very strong character, always stiff upper lip and getting on with it, even if it's not always something I agree with, but very focused. And dealing with fragility. But the other way, if he did go into somewhere else, I could see that moral ambiguity, as I'll call it, like creeping in over the years. It's still in him.
Like,
the baby steps.
Like loses track over time. It's like
a little bit, yeah.
It's the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Exactly,
sort of
and it's if you move a centimetre every day, eventually you'll have travelled a mile. So I think in that regard it works. Not if they jump back in and just quickly retread the same sort of ground.
Yeah,
it's something I'd like to visit. Like,
he's wearing a mask.
Like in 3 expansions time, where he's been kind of left to his own devices, and then you come in and you're like, what the hell happened here? And it's like, well, it was incremental, and it got here, and one thing compounded. I could see that happening. The other way, I'd be interested in seeing dealing with some fragility or a very new story arc going on with him. It does bring up the idea that Reen might play a part in things, in which case the daddy role would re-emerge, which I'm kind of okay with this one. So what did you have for Urianger?
So I actually agree with you on a lot of that. I would say that I love the idea of him becoming an authority somewhere, by which I mean basically retiring is kind of what I would imagine in that scenario. So I would love to see him, say, become a professor at the Studium. Or a member of the Forum. I think that would make a lot of sense for Urianger. If he doesn't retire or have some drastically different story arc, I think maybe not even necessarily kill him off, but find some other sort of dramatic change. So I know you toyed with the idea of him, say, becoming the Watcher.
Yes.
In like tying that into the moon. And I actually love that idea. I think
replacing him, giving that guy rest.
Like passing the torch on, kind of like the Three-Eyed Raven story, right?
Yep.
I think that would make a lot of sense for Urianger as well. I probably wouldn't have him die per se, but something like that would make a lot of sense. Or have him kind of step into a more retired role. He would be there for the right story to come in the way some other characters do.
Yeah, it's a great character to ascend in some way. That's the word I would use. Like some sort of ascension.
Yeah.
He could take this also an ethereal role. I didn't bring up the Watcher because people like the Watcher as well, but it's more the case of he could fulfill his purpose. He's somebody who you would choose to watch over a planet for 20,000 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He would be your choice immediately. It's like, this fits you perfectly. And it could also be in the Final Fantasy XIV style of being really sad. Like, I will take this role. You know, like it falls to me, and thus I would do it.
And I can almost sort of foresee him like coming in, and this would be a good way to use the kind of duplicitous angle. He's like he comes in and sort of takes it at the last minute. I think could be kind of fun as a way of doing
something like that, or
so
he is on the brink of death. You know, there's a load of things they can do to make it a really impactful moment of saving him in a way.
Yeah.
From doing something, and that would be a good send off to him because as it stands right now, and I do know, and we are moving into brand new stories for everybody.
Yeah,
that's cool. But one thing they can't do for me, and I think this will apply to nearly everybody, is suddenly retcon something in like, oh, I knew that person years ago, and actually they were crucial to my life, and blah, blah, blah. You know, a lot of like,
yeah.
We need context for this that we've never mentioned in like 8 years.
Yeah.
Now suddenly needs a lot of it.
That would be very frustrating.
It would be a little bit, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So is that
that's my Urianger. Yeah.
Okay, so that was my worst of the best Scions. Who's on yours?
Yeah. Okay, so my next up is Thancred.
Same.
Interesting.
Same.
Okay, so Thancred is kind of a tricky character because I think we're in agreement here, as are a lot of people out there, is that he should have died back in Shadowbringers.
It would have been perfect.
It would have been perfect. He had the perfect moment.
Yes, he did.
Having him actually kill off Ranjit and he takes his last breath to save Reen would have been perfect. But they just... And we talked about it at length. We were even planning to do a video on it a while ago. Was like, they just can't seem to do it for those core characters. Like, they'll do it for characters where they write it from the beginning, like Horshafont, but they just can't do it for those core Scions that everyone cares about.
They're very much okay with killing characters that exist in the expansion to die.
Yeah. I mean, Papalimo's kind of the only exception. No one gives a shit about Papalimo, so
no.
That was the only reason why that even worked. So, that's a tough one. So the difficulty with Thancred is, aside from his role as a father to Reen, his only real purpose is to be the fighter.
Yep.
I would say.
Yeah, the fighter spy.
So I can't really see him ever retiring, but I do think he needs to go. And in general, the theme of what I'll be talking about today is mostly about passing the torch onto the next generation. And so Thancred is part of that, and I think they need to get rid of him. And so, to be honest, I can only really see that working if they kill him off. But it's not going to be as good as it would have been.
The moment's passed.
The moment's kind of passed.
Yep.
So I think they would really have to build that up. It would be very difficult. Not only would you have to reincorporate Reen in some way, so that has the right story and the right gravitas, and then have that build up to another moment where you're not thinking about Shadowbringers. So that's a tough one, for sure. But that is what I would like to happen. Is I would like...
You need to, I assume that fulfills a dual purpose for you. Is like not just to kill him off because he's done, because you can write end of stories, but also to get rid of the Scion plot armor. They can die.
Yes, absolutely. And the third purpose would be to actually have a physical passing the torch moment to Reen, which I'll come back to later. So all of that I think would be very crucial for Thancred, because he's... I suppose a good comparison would be something like Sourfang in WoW, or even Varian in WoW. It's like, those are people that, they never stop, they only fall, right? They always go until their last breath, because that's who they are as a person. So, unlike with, say, a character like Urianger, who you could see kind of going off into the sunset, I don't really necessarily see that for Thancred, unless he was like some... secret mercenary or something.
Blaze of Glory is kind of how he would go down.
It very, very much fits that character.
Yeah, he would go down with his gunblade swinging every single step of the way. I had Thancred down as well. I agree with most of what you just said, but I don't think they can kill him now, at least for another couple of expansions, if not more, because that moment is so strong in Shadowbringers, and it should have happened then. And I think a lot of people would have been, although he's definitely the favourite character of many people, it's so perfect. That entire sequence of gameplay is... I actually think they didn't kill him for two reasons. One, they didn't want to kill any of the Scions, which is the obvious one.
Yeah.
They're just like, people are too attached to them. The playbase would be sad and match and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But the other one, I think, is I don't think they realised how good that sequence was.
Yeah, that's entirely possible.
Yeah. I think if they would have had more feedback of like, this is incredible what you've made, which they may have had, but I suspect they didn't. It's like, you should die here. Like, if a lot of people internally were like, this should be his end moment for that to happen. The other thing, and we have to bring up Reen here. So my personal theory is Reen is going to play a big part in the game going forward.
Yeah.
In which case, that has to tie to Thancred in some way. Maybe even in a way he doesn't like. Now, so I'm going to stick with you as like, yeah, Thancred seems like the obvious character who could die off and it'd be okay, although the moment has passed, so they'd have to sort of rebuild and try and reach that moment again, which is really hard. But his entire story has been tied to Minfilia, essentially.
Yeah.
So he needs something new. And I think a really interesting story that I would kind of like to see with Thancred, assuming they're not going to kill him off because, again, the moment's passed, is that Reen is not Minfilia.
Yep.
That approach. And, like, I would like to see probably, even though he's got this dad role and he obviously can't be with her, there's going to be the reuniting moment, but Reen is making decisions that Minfilia wouldn't.
Right.
And she's doing things that he doesn't agree with. Because of his, from his love of Minfilia and what she did, is like, this is not the way she would have acted. And then, I'm not her. And have that relationship story build up. I think that could be something interesting to follow, is that digression away from that. Because I'm sure he still looks at Reen as Minfilia.
Yeah.
In every single way. And to have that, she's her own person. She's going to go in a different way. And maybe she's going to be putting herself in life-threatening situations, which she's really not happy about.
Yeah.
And she's going to have to, you can't stop me. That kind of thing happening with Thancred, I think, could be interesting. And maybe even going in a direction of, like, he wants to leave at that point because he can't look at what's happening. Whereas the rest of the signs, like, she has to do it. And Minfilia would have done it as well, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, it kind of goes into that. It even reinforces the parental kind of idea there, because he's like an overprotective father at that point, right?
Yeah, he absolutely is. Because he saw Minfilia die. Right? For him, Minfilia died, and he failed her, as the protector, and he's never going to let that happen again. Like, there's such a strong thing that still exists, even after everything Shadowbringers there, that can't be done because, she's in the first or whatever, and, like, that's really hard to do, sort of, depending on what it is. I do feel like Reen is going to play a really prominent role, maybe not in Dawn Trail, but immediately after, I think, because they keep teasing. There's so much happening there that they keep having to resolve in extra content.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't know this, if you haven't done certain things, like, there's so much they keep having to put into the first of the characters, because if they didn't, they would be negligent with what's happening there. So that's the other direction I'd like to go with Thancred, is to have a really rocky road with Reen. I'd be down for that, along with, I guess we're kind of missing the obvious, is like, we're going to have the disruption of the Scions is coming. We know that, I don't know really what's happening and why Thancred was being so sneaky, and can I get your thoughts on that? He doesn't approach the other Scions who are his friends. He hides behind a tree, which I really didn't like. I was like, what is going on here?
Interesting, okay. Yeah, I had a very different vibe than you, but...
Yeah, my vibe was like, these are your friends who you've saved the world with, and you're back in town together, which is extraordinarily rare at this stage. And you're hiding and listening in on them, and you're having sneaky meetings with Urianger, but they seem to be playful about it.
This is my feeling.
Yeah, so my idea was, do you think you're going for like a really fun, I call it the Highland Games on streams, like, do you think this contest is really more of like a fun sports day? Where you get to go and have some fun together, and then you're going to rock into the arena. So they're fighting, you got maybe the other Scions who are like fighting for the rights of all these people because Alfie's over there, and of course it's all very serious. And then they rock up in like little shorts and a little vest top, and they're like, "Yeah, it's us, hello!" And they're like, "What are you guys doing?" And they're like, "Yeah, we turned up as well. We're going to win the trophy." And they're like, "Trophy? What are you doing,
dude? This guy wants to invade Garlemald. What are you doing?"
Yeah, this guy's trying to build an army to conquer the planet, and Urianger's like, oh.
Yeah, like, certainly my feeling is at least so far from Thancred and Urianger, and we don't yet know specifically who their patron is, by the way.
No, we don't know.
So we don't actually know if they're working for the bad guy. I mean, I would suspect probably they're working for the brother.
Mm-hmm.
I doubt they would be so playful about it if they knew the guy was going to try and invade Garlemald.
Yeah, but we don't know the motives of the other ones yet either.
No.
And whether they've... I would kind of like it, but it's a very small payoff. It's small potatoes is to have them turn up and like, hey, we're doing 100 meters and hurdles, and the other guys are like, dude, this is really important.
Urianger's sipping on a cocktail. He's hey,
exactly. So, that's what I'd like to have with that. Okay, so far, Urianger and Thancred. Right, my next least favourite Scion, to be clear, is Estinien.
Okay, no, this is not mine. So.
Okay, so where have you got Estinien? I don't want to know what your next worst one is.
He's next.
Okay, so there's somebody above Estinien for you. All right. We are getting into the realms of, I will say, like, they're all kind of equal.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's fairly negligible.
Yeah. But for Estinien, the context of why he's in this role is he really hasn't done something meaty in his own personal development since Heaven's Ward. His resolution with the dragons is done. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, they did explore it a bit in Endwalker, obviously, with...
There's touches with it. I mean, he's just riding dragons at this point. Like, he's the dragon's best friend at this point. He might as well
he's come full circle. Yeah, he's a dragon dude.
I actually wrote it here. It's in my notes. Has come full circle. And he's resolved with his major conflicts with the dragons. We're all happy with that. He's good. And his big issue is he needs something new. They kind of use him as a little levity in some occasions. You know, they can't pay for things. Doesn't have money. He's kind of like... He's almost like... sexy, oily comic relief on occasions. You know, it's like he's doing push-ups and then he's jumping out of windows like Batman, and you're like, okay. But he's not. He's like a badass. He's a super badass.
Yeah, for sure.
But a bit dolty on occasion. What I would like to happen with Estinien, and this is definitely selfish, is I want something to go wrong in Ishgard, and I want Emmerich to call upon Estinien and give him the conflict of his ties to the Scions and to his home city. With what's going on there. One, it brings Emmerich back, please, in some way.
He's great.
Ishgard is a wonderful world with a rich backstory that is still growing and recovering. We haven't really explored that too much. We've done Ishgardian restoration in terms of like physical rebuilding, but the political and religious upheaval that city suffered will have ramifications for decades.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would really like them to explore that in the quality storytelling that Final Fantasy IV, because I think they'd handle it delicately. But with gravitas and weight of what having your religion shattered does to a people. And we've seen globally not good for a really long time, especially when it resurges, because a lot of people who are very faithful can't really live in a world without faith. We've seen that countless times. Like, you can't just say that faith is misguided or misplaced and just be like, get on with your life. Like, they've had this huge part of them lost. So civil war is definitely a possibility.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, imagine a straight up coup.
Yeah.
Where Emmerich is like literally supplanted. So you have a new High Bishop rise up, and you're literally having to like re-invade Ishgard or something.
Something along those lines, or where you're the only person I can trust. Lucia has been either taken or she's taken up in Garlemald so much that she's been apart away from it, and now she can't leave where she is. You know, she's dealing with things over there. She's the wrong person to call, and the person we would call in this scenario is Lucia and Estinien. You're pure, because he's extraordinarily pure. He has no moral ambiguity, but he's also a knife you point in the right direction and he jumps off a cloud and gets there. Again, we could keep saying overall they need something fresh. Estinien hasn't had anything fresh for a really long time. Without being the silly, oily comic relief. And that's something I really want to see again, because Ishgard and Heaven's Ward is such a wonderful story. And I'm always interested in the religious implications of a religion falling, which is what happened there. And Emmerich is great. I'd like to see more of him. So that's what I would like to see with Estinien. Is actually pull him out of Dawn Trail in a sense and have him having his own B story. That resolves in a different patch, and you know, maybe the other Scions do come and help.
Yeah, I mean, you could almost maybe say that might be good for, say, a raid story or something, or like an alliance raid. Maybe.
Yeah, like Graha got.
Yeah. 12, but maybe the alliance raid is literally Ishgard or something, right?
Sick.
Almost imagine. So that could be really, really cool. I definitely. So I had down that he needs something. He needs a new story to go through. I hadn't really considered what that was. I do love the idea of an Ishgard themed thing. Beyond that, and this is maybe in like after he's resolved kind of his next plot point, is I actually do foresee him becoming more of a frontline Scion than he is now. So now he's kind of like in and out. He's kind of come in to help, and then he's gone. He's come in to help, and then he's gone. Obviously, he was there for Ultima Thule and stuff. But he's always been kind of like, he's there when he's needed, but he's never all in. Yeah,
I think the phrase that you would say is he's always had one foot out the door.
Yeah.
Every occasion. He could supplant Thancred even.
Yeah.
As that's the soldiery, spy role. Although it's not great here. But they have worked together several times. You know, we've seen that in raid stories. I like that. What do you think he brings to the table then as a main Scion?
So, in general, like I talked about with my theme, is that it's about the old guard going and bringing the new blood. And I see characters like Estinien, who are older, as kind of being that role that Y'shtola, Thancred, and Urianger have now. So they are the more mature voice, as silly as Estinien can be, but hopefully they resolve that a little bit. But I think that's what he would be. He would be the more mature element, along with those other characters in that group.
One thing I'm getting for this, I think we both agree, that character has so much potential.
Of course he does. I mean,
yeah.
It's not a potential that's often explored, and it hasn't been generally since Heavensward. He's either been Batman, which I don't dislike. I still like Batman in Stormblood. I love Stormblood. Of that story, I still enjoy it. The comic relief stuff's a little less.
Yeah, I think it diminishes him.
It's a little goofy.
It reminds me of Y'shtola with the creature she summons where she's like oohing.
I mean, I kind of like that.
See, I was like,
that's kind of a one-off thing.
Yeah, it was a one-off thing, but they even apologized for it, I believe. They were like, they didn't apologize, but said we're not doing that again. With
no, I think it's the reason I like the Y'shtola one is that it's quite self-aware, and actually, Y'shtola's like self-aware of it as well. So it's not her being goofy. It's a goofy moment happening to an otherwise serious character. Whereas I would argue that Estinien's kind of almost entered a slightly goofy characterization.
Oh yeah, jumping out the window is dumb. Like, regardless of who it is, it's just dumb. Like, comes in through the door, dies out the window. I know people love it, and I'm not.
I still love that moment. I'm not going to say
it made me laugh. I'm not going to say like it didn't hit me in the right spot, but also for a character who rides on the back of dragons and leaps through the sky with a spear and shreds things to death, it's like it's really dumb. Because it's 60s campy Batman. Yeah. It's not your Christian Bale or your Twilight guy. It's campy Adam West. Doing that. It's like, why are you going out the window? Because I have to. And it's like, okay. Or the shirtless thing is just pure fan service.
Yeah.
Which is what it is. Because I know like people love him. Like Jordan certainly absolutely adores that character, and I'm like, he just hasn't done anything for me in a while.
Yeah.
And I want him to, because every time he appears, I'm like, oh, I like this character a lot.
He's so cool.
He's cool, and his story is great.
I wonder if there's maybe some room to explore something else with Ysayle. Obviously, she's long dead and stuff, but she's wearing, like, the ice arm. I mean, I forget what he calls his armor, but it's got a name that's associated with Ysayle. And that's kind of a fairly big part of that story. So I wonder if maybe there's something that could be explored there.
Could be a rebirth in some kind, because obviously she was, like, inhabiting a dragon inhabiting her, was the tale there. With some rebirth, with some memories, could be interesting.
So that's an option.
There's another Lady Iceheart, because that's an acquired name.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Ysayle is the person, but Lady Iceheart is the name that was... and again, it could tie into some sort of... I mean, you could mix them both. There's a religious angle with Lady Iceheart building in Ishgard. They found a new faith, and it's a twisted version. But you would really mess with Estinien.
Yeah, although, I mean, it would be retreading again, because obviously we've already had Reen do Shiva as well. Although it was only briefly, of course. So yeah, I like that idea that maybe there's like a bastardization of the faith for Shiva.
Yeah.
And maybe it's someone like pretending to be Ysayle or something. Like,
especially considering how many primals aren't in 14 that we've encountered, certainly in the single player FFs. There's plenty.
Oh, so you're not thinking necessarily it's even Shiva, it might be someone else.
Even doppelganging or something like that. Yeah, there could be something darker going on. Again, the thing with Estinien, like we're clearly saying, is like there's like 90 billion avenues you can go with this character, and none of them seem to be going anywhere.
No.
They're always like, I guess, I mean, we've said it, spoilers. His inclusion in the MSQ this time was so goofy. It was so good because they didn't show Y'shtola, right? So, and we know she's going to be there. And it seemed like what was the point of including this Estinien scene of him, like, randomly and coincidentally,
ferry.
Getting on the ferry to go where we're going in Dawn Trail. Like, and Estinien is also going. And I was like, what does this serve?
Yeah.
As a purpose? And again, it's kind of goofy. It's like, oh yeah, and he's going on his holidays. You know, he might as well have had a stick with that spotted knapsack on the back of it.
Tied to the end of his lance.
Yeah, or a margarita, like, and Estinien's going on his vacation. It just happens to be where we're going. He's randomly decided now. And I was like, ah.
And I'll say, certainly at least judging from the trailer of Dawn Trail, it doesn't seem like he's doing anything super important. Like, because he was just hunting.
I almost consider he won't be. He'll be there when fighting's needed. Because based on how he's been written for the last couple of years, or 4 years or so, is he will join a side, and he will fight for that side. And that's what really depresses me about him, and why he falls into this spot, for me, from third from the bottom, is like, I almost don't have faith in them doing something with him, because seemingly what he does right now works.
Yeah.
For a lot of people. You know, when we see tier lists and stuff, Estinien's rated so highly, and I'm here going, he could be so much more. Like, this character, his backstory is so rich as the first Dragoon, you know, of what he came from. And I get he wants some time off, but there'll also be a period, and we talked about this today, too much time off is not good.
No, you need something.
Yeah, you need something. And he does have that thing. So it's not like he hasn't popped in and out, but then he's like, and bye again. Back out the door.
So, interesting, now we've discussed it further, I'm actually kind of agreeing with the position of moving him slightly like down one, I think, in hindsight.
You can't change the list, sorry.
No. But,
okay.
I mean, it doesn't matter.
Well, it's up to you now. So, yeah, I mean, your next one doesn't matter.
Yeah, because it would have been the same either way.
Yeah.
But it's just an interesting point. Because my next one is Y'shtola.
I am the same. Well, I'm not the same. She ranked one higher than Estinien for me, so we got these reversed.
And I think, ironically, I actually do like her more than you at the moment, interestingly.
I'm disappointed as well.
Yeah, so Y'shtola's a great character. She's like the box art character of FF14, which is part of the reason why I'm worried they won't do what I think they need to do with her, as we've talked about. So with Y'shtola, recently, all she's been doing is MacGuffin-y stuff. She's definitely very dedicated to doing the interplanar travel, and I think that's going to come to its conclusion probably at the end of this expansion. Obviously, I've talked about my theories with Solution 9, and I think that's what's going to lead into that. After that, though, I think what needs to happen is one of two things. Either, and this is my preference, that she goes into a retired role, or that she dies. I think it needs to be one or the other. What I would like to actually happen, this is my preferred option, is I would actually like Matoya to die. I would like her to die of old age.
Yep.
Because she's definitely old enough.
She certainly is.
I think that's an opportunity to have a really nice story with her and Yish. Have that kind of final passing on for Master Matoya. And then I sort of envision Y'shtola entering something similar of a role there. Although I know you're not a huge fan of her being Matoya-ish.
The Matoya I reference when talking about Y'shtola is not actually Matoya. It's her interpretation of Matoya.
Oh, yeah, I suppose that's fair.
That makes more sense, I think.
Yeah, so I would like that to happen. So whether she goes more into kind of a research scientist role, not necessarily a hermit in the way that Matoya
I don't see her in a cave with frogs and stuff.
No. But certainly kind of entering more of that wizened mentor role that she kind of takes anyway. And to use that to kind of create the path for everyone else.
Yeah.
And again, that kind of follows along. So Y'shtola, Urianger, and Thancred moving out of the way. I want them gone in some fashion to make room for the next generation. In terms of her death, if that was to be the option, and Lord knows she's earned it, because
she's survived a lot of things.
Christ,
she should not have done.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll say this. I mean, obviously, she could die. They cannot do another bait and switch ever again.
Which they will, I'm pretty sure.
It's so ridiculous. I mean, how many times is it now? Like 6?
I think it's 5.
It was
completely should have died moments she's got out of.
Like End of a Realm Reborn. Stormblood gets cut in half.
Yep, Shadowbringers goes down a hole.
Yeah, that's 3. Is there any more?
There is a couple more, yeah. I know we did a count on stream the other day because it came up. I think it's 5.
It's something absurd anyway.
Good job, Lex.
So Y'shtola's got this thing with her eyes, which is blindness, but only when it's plot convenient. In which, well, she can see ether.
It's actually an upgrade in every single possible way.
Kind of, yeah. She just can't see the stars. That's kind of it, right? Because she has to get Urianger to say some poetry, which was a nice cutscene. I still like that. But supposedly, and apparently people are saying this is a kind of a confused translation. I don't know how true that is. She has to expend her power to do it.
That's how I understand
it. And Matoya said this back when it first happened, is that she was expending her ether, which I equate to like your internal storage of ether, i.e. like your life force. So she's shortening her life to see. That was the caveat that I always got. I don't know if people disagree with that. I'm kind of
I
curious
think
about
it's I think the mistranslation comes from something to do with you can regenerate your ether, right? Like it can be reborn. It's like a battery that you can recharge.
Yeah.
I like your interpretation way more because it opens up so many more possibilities.
It absolutely does. And so I foresee if they were going to kill her off, I would like to see her begin to suffer the effects, i.e. become weak, to the point where she has to stop using magic entirely and stop seeing. So she becomes blind and useless.
Again, that fragility aspect is something we've brought up a couple of times, is it creates that conflict that the older Scions that are seemingly impervious, and I guess that's why we keep leaning there, is like they're just so immortal all the time.
Like Thancred can't even use magic anymore. Doesn't seem to make a fucking difference.
No one cares.
Because like, someone could just make him shells, right? So that's all that counts. But the dude's still like doing flips on swords and all sorts of stuff. It doesn't seem to make much difference for him.
No, he's supposed to be about 45 or something?
Well, the ages are a bit funny with the Scions, in fairness. But yeah, so I would like to see that happen, where she's completely blind, she can't use magic anymore. If she uses magic again, it will kill her, is the story there. And that at some point when it is mission critical, she decides she has to do what's necessary and lay down her life for the people she cares about, i.e. the other Scions, where she has to do some crazy magic to save everyone else.
I could foresee her sacrificing her life to become the conduit between the shards.
I love that idea. I think that's a great idea. Like, especially if it becomes like not just a convenience, which I suppose is what it would be now, where it's not necessarily that important beyond for the 13th. But if there's a moment where there's actually real jeopardy to it, and she has to do it, like say there's like an equivalent to like Zeromus, where there's something kind of coming through, maybe giving her life to kind of open the ways. I could see that being kind of cool. I don't know how much
I would hate though. The meme would be we're traveling through Y'shtola's tunnel, which is immediately popped into my head at that, as if she creates some sort of corridor way between the shards.
Jesus Christ.
But yeah, I could see that as well. Y'shtola is obviously next on my list, despite the fact she was my number one Scion for 3 expansions, if we include Realm Reborn.
Yeah.
She's become not very, but slightly obnoxious. She shows up to the mommy role. I get it, haha memes, but she has that role now, and she kind of turns up with the kids and she solves their problems for them. Like they're idiots almost.
Yeah.
She just rocks up, and she did this in Endwalker as well. And she's like, no, this is what we do, and it's sorted, and I built the thing, and it's here. And I'm like, it wasn't used to be like that with her. She used to be someone who was struggling and working with the team on an equal play. I don't feel she's on an equal playing field. It feels like she's in this upper level where it's like, oh, it's really serious now. It's a Y'shtola problem.
Right, okay.
Do you know what I mean? That the others can't deal with, it's a Y'shtola problem. Urianger is a bit like that as well. It's like, oh, we need to seal the moon from the moon hole from getting out and stuff. So that's an Urianger job with the Loprits. And I just don't like that aspect of it, because I really feel like there's not an arrogance to it. It's just it just feels a little obnoxious compared to somebody who's part of the Scions are supposed to be a rock solid team, leaning on each other's skill sets, because they've all got very, very different skill sets. But she kind of swoops in, and she's often not there for the majority of the story.
Yeah, that's true.
Like Stormblood, she's gone.
Yeah, she's recovering.
In Shadowbringers, she's Matoya and she's leading people, and then she.
In Shadowbringers, she was great though.
She's great in Shadowbringers, and it was finally great to see her back. And then in Endwalker, she was kind of gone again, and just rocked up whenever was needed to open things and to. I've got the solution. I can summon this thing, and I can create this thing. Alize, you play with clay, or whatever. And it was like. Okay, so that's something I'd like. I would either like to see 2 things. One is that she does become, again, this ascension idea with the older Scions. Something like creating the conduits. Because that's going to happen. We're definitely going to have free travel for other characters. Yeah. Between the shards. I can't see that. They're holding on to that for dear life to not let that happen. Because we can, we always mean it's like fax, email, they can Bluetooth through there.
Yeah, they can do a lot now. I mean, there's some weird plot contrivances, like they can only send ether towards the void because it's dark ether aligned, and that you can only go from like this ether to this ether because it's stasis. And
it's getting very actually about the whole thing. Instead of keep it simple, it's still a video game.
We don't necessarily. I mean, I love the lore stuff, especially when it gets a little nerdy. I am into that stuff. But there is a certain point where it's like you have to kind of explain the rules. A great thing, like I feel about magic systems, it's one of the reasons I love, say, the Cosmere Cycle, which you've not read, but is that you establish your rules, and that's what you can live by.
That's the same.
You can go with whatever rules you want. You just need to stick to them.
Yeah, any movie rule says the same thing. It's like you establish the rules of the game or the movie, and then you have to stick to it. And when it doesn't stick to it, your brain instantly goes, "No, that's not how that works in this movie or this world."
Yeah,
and it's annoying. Because you clearly pointed out earlier on that it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And you keep finding new ways of being like, but actually we do this and move away. It's one of the things I've really appreciated recently about 40k.
Yeah.
Is for the most part, even going back to the old lore, they've pretty much stuck to the rules of the world. But they came up with some. I guess the good one is they came up with really good ways of being able to introduce new things later, even though they're not advancing. So like the SCTs.
Yeah.
All that information is out there, we just haven't found it. Simple.
Yeah.
Really cool. We found a new model of Titan or whatever. It's like, okay, they found an SCT. That was established a long time ago as a thing.
Well, I think along the 40k argument is like, it makes a lot of sense in that universe, because there have been things that have been retconned.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But the argument that they kind of come up with, and I think it works in 40k, is that everything is unreliably narrated. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, it kind of works. And certainly, I don't think FF14's got to the stage yet where I'm like, this just doesn't make sense anymore. The only time I've ever been like that has been with the time travel around Shadowbringers and Endwalker, because seemingly there's two different forms of time travel where the rules work differently. Mm-hmm. But that's the only time that's ever happened for me. Like, so far the rules with the reflections and the ether, it's not gone there yet, but I think they just need to be careful.
Yeah, you can just go too far with a tech battle where it's like, okay, you're really shredding this thin.
At a certain point, you just got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and they're holding on to it for dear life. And she's going to be involved in that, and that's great. Mm-hmm. I don't want that to happen. But I would really like to humble her, is the other approach I would like. Because she does feel overwhelmingly powerful. She almost feels like... I kind of compared her in my thoughts when I was writing this to the Phoenix in Marvel. It's like, she's just like really, really freaking good. That's it, like everything. They said she's blind, but it's actually kind of an upgrade in most ways. And I would like to see her humbled in some way and brought down back onto the level of the team. Because I love that character. I don't want to see her die. But if they keep going this way, it's like, well, that kind of makes sense at this point, because she needs to be taken out of the equation. Because as soon as Ether's mentioned, she's like, draft her in, she's got it sorted.
Yeah.
And we're on our way. And you can say, oh, that moves the plot forward. It's like, I would like a more interesting way of moving the plot forward than you just total the souls up and sorts it out. So that's my thoughts there as well. All right, now we're in these really close, okay? Really, really
And they were
close.
already close.
They're already close. Now it's really close. So my next one was Krile.
Okay, yeah. Yep, same.
Okay, so you're in the same one. If they don't resolve the grandfather thing in this expansion,
I'm going to be mad.
I'm going to stomp a Lalafell IRL. I swear to God. It's been years of her bringing up that bloody grandfather, and now we're going there. I'm like, resolve this story, because Krile needs more. One thing that's cool about this and why Krile is someone I'm super excited about Dawn Trail is, although, and I'm going to reiterate this as well, her intro as Pictomancer sucked so hard.
Yeah, I mean, compare that to like any of the other class intros we've had. I mean, even the first one, so Ninja with Thancred, even though I know you don't like it, but it was spectacular.
For people who enjoy that, it's not a job I enjoy.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to deny the video wasn't. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool.
And they just had her do one spell. Like, I mean, it's the Moogle, which is cool.
It's the Moogle one, which is fine. And then just showed a picture of Realm.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's cool, having Realm, like, having them reference Realm.
Yeah, it's just not epic. We'd already beat the monster.
Yeah.
And then she comes in and, like, does... For all I know, that Moogle did 1 damage.
Yeah.
And I think it was on health.
Yeah, it was a bit unspectacular, for sure.
Yeah, it was. But they've recognised that Krile needs more, because she hasn't really had something meaty to do since Stormblood, when she was captured. So she was kidnapped is kind of a big story point that we've had.
Well, and then Walker, she was the beacon through which Heidelin was talking, so that was kind of...
Yeah, but by the end, everybody was kind of doing it. Right? Everybody was kind of doing it. She did get Eureka, don't get me wrong. And I will be clear, I haven't finished Eureka. I didn't like the grinding style of it. So she has had Eureka, but in terms of MSQ, which is obviously where we're lurking here, She's not had much to do. She's been, taking care of the Scions when they were all passed out and things like that. She's a wonderful, wonderful character.
Yeah.
And she's such a joy to have come onto the screen. Like, I'm well over the fact that she looks like Pikachu. Which is what my first impression, and many people's first impression would have been. When she comes on screen, I'm just like, Kril's here.
Yeah.
Awesome.
She's great.
Can I have more reasons to care about her? Because that's what I want with her. So it's got to be the resolution with the grandfather. I would so my hope with her is we've obviously got this letter that's signed by the current leader that was sent to her grandfather, but not written by him, which is the little plot note they put in there.
Yes, I'm thinking maybe it was dictated, but I mean the fact that they've said that is a bit sus.
Yeah, did they get the signature for something else and swap it or blah blah blah? There's some shenanigans going on there. I really want to see that most of this Dawn Trail revolves around Krile and having her make some big decisions, because the intro we've had to her is that she keeps getting left behind.
Yeah.
I'm not a part of the team. I'm here, but not really.
Yeah.
And I can't help. I'm not strong enough. Kind of a retreading the Tataru ground that we had in early days, where she tries to become a summoner and she's feeble and rubbish. But let's not go down that road again. And I want her to be the most integral part, actually, of Dawn Trail in the first stages, because she's the one who needs it. I don't think she's had a storyline as strong as, say, Graha's had at all, including his line, not just Shadowbringers and the Crystal Exarch, but also the 12. He was great in that. And she should become one of the major players of the Scions.
I would agree. That's kind of my big thing, is that, yes, I agree on the grandfather thing. I've got that down as well.
Yeah.
So I think that with her becoming the Pictomancer, that's basically them saying, okay, she's no longer a background character. She's now going to be a forefront character. And I see her as coming in as a full Scion now, not just a student, the students of Baldesion kind of helping out. I see her as being a forefront character now. And much like with Estinien, I kind of imagine her also taking on that more mentorish role as the others move out.
Yeah, she could fill the Y'shtola role.
Exactly.
Not just because of the gender, but the styles of what they bring to the team.
The character, right? How the personality.
That skill set, moving into that and bringing it in.
Exactly, yeah. So that's kind of the role I see her having. I just want to see more of her. The grandfather thing is the only main thread right now. So they kind of have to go down that. And clearly they are, because that's a big thread of their story. So it'll just be a case of how they pull that off, I think. For sure.
Agreed. All right, 3 left. Who's your next one?
And my next one is Graha.
Same.
Okay.
I am shocked. I am actually shocked. Okay.
Okay, so, yeah. I mean,
that's really interesting who we've got as the last two.
Yeah, we got the twins at the top. That's cool.
Okay. Which order, though?
That is the question. So, Graha. So, he's a great character. We love him as the Crystal Exarch, and having him again in the Prime universe is great. In particular, what I love about Graha is he has these moments where he's kind of young and innocent, and he's like this. He's almost like a puppy dog character. He's your number one fan.
Yep. He likes good taco.
But the best thing about Graha is when the other guy comes out,
yes.
And I think you probably agree, is that when that wizened, experienced, ancient mind comes to the forefront, and we've compared it to Doctor Who.
He is Doctor Who. He's basically exactly who he is. He's
where, you've got a young man, but you've got the old eyes. And we actually had it a little bit in this patch.
I was so happy.
And I was like, yes, there he is. There's my boy.
Yeah, it was something we harped on about. Is like, I want to see him lean on the fact that this guy's old as balls and has seen horrors beyond horrors. He's watched worlds fall. That needs to come out and not show him as like this little cat boy with flicky ears.
Yeah,
he could do that because he's in a young physical body.
You can have both. I think having that come through is really great. And so for me, assuming it goes the way I would imagine, which is that Urianger, Y'shtola, and Thancred go, I foresee him as being one of two people, the other one we'll talk about, taking a leadership role in the Scions, possibly. Because he has that experience and he has led people. Yep. He led people on the first. I also incidentally think that may be a good opportunity for him to stop being Graha Tia and maybe even become Graha Nun, which I don't think you've done the side quest series. So basically, the Mikote Seekers of the Sun, which is one of the tribes, they're patriarchal, and they have one leading male, like a breeding male, basically. And so every other male is called Tia. That's why they're all called Tia. And when one becomes a leader, they become Nun, N-U-N-H. Now, I think I remember distinctly, and I can't remember when it was, but Ishtola talks to us about it, and she mentions that it would be okay for him to say that he's Nun now, even though he's not a tribal member, but because he's led people. I can't remember where I saw it. I don't know if it was in like a side quest or something, but I know that's been mentioned. And I think because he is that leader, he could maybe do that.
Yeah.
He could graduate up to being the full character. I think that's optional, though. I don't think it's important. But I think he could be a really cool leader for that. And just kind of explore that Exarch side of the character.
It's his most interesting aspects.
Yeah.
You know, if you take the Exarch out of G'raha, there ain't much.
No, he's just cute.
Yeah, he's just a cute, fun, handy person to have in a scrap kind of person. And I've got a similar sort of role because now we're going into this political upheaval in Dawn Trail, is that I want to see, and they did show a bit of it in the early MSQ, when he's like assessing the situation and he's kind of staring out over the ocean. And he's considering the length and breadth of the world, which means more to him than it does to most of the other Scions because he's outlived them all. Is he's the one who actually inspires cohesion. Yeah. Because he's seen how bad this can go. Yes, he had to deal with like the flood and stuff like that, but he also had to deal with he inspired love and loyalty throughout the Crystarium. They loved him. It was almost a level of worship. If you think about how Lena reflects on the Exarch, she would lay down her life for him in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And none of the other Scions can attest to accomplishing such a thing. They are loved of the world over for sure, but how many people who would lay down their lives without even blinking for one of the Scions?
Oh yeah.
Which G'raha did. I don't even think I think he's reached an age. It's not that he's like dismissing it. It's just that he understands it past that. It's like, yeah, but I don't want them to do that. I need them to do this, and this, and this is why he inspired such loyalty and conviction. From his people. And he never even brings it up. Like he's so humble in what he's actually done, and that's something I want to be resonated in the game more. It's like, do you realize what this guy did?
Yeah.
Because we look at him as
the sacrifice.
The sacrifice and the years and time that he put into this. So his own body was decaying and rotting. And he still pushed forward. This guy has done things that none of you have done. And still he's kind of looked at as the 17-year-old teenager and he's correcting every now and again. I'm like, that's not quite the G'raha I want to see. Not all the time, though. And I think we're both agreed on this. Is like, he should still be, which happens in Doctor Who as well, with a similar sort of vibe, right? Is that it comes when it needs to come. But other than that, this is a man who's giving me a second lease on life in a young body. And he's going to enjoy the hell out of it. Yeah, he's going to go surfing and he's going to be eating tacos.
He wants to go on adventures.
Yeah, and probably be with ladies and things like that. Like, he's a young man again. Yeah. But these moments need to be reflected more. And I haven't seen them reflected too much in G'raha because it's always his pursuit of knowledge that's highlighted.
Yeah.
And his fascination with things and history. That's cool. But you've also done this other stuff, which is way bigger. I understand the pursuit of, like, knowledge got him through those times in Shadowbringers, right? His knowledge of what was going to happen and research and things like that. So, yeah, it's understandable that he's a book fiend. But at the same time, he's also got experience. And I want to see more of that experience and that inspiration that he obviously showed those people. Yeah. I would love to see that.
Absolutely, 100%.
Cool. Okay. Right, so obviously we've both got the twins in the first and second position. This is not for memes. My next least favourite Scion in the number 2 spot is Alizé.
I am the same.
Okay.
And this is kind of an interesting one for me because I really struggled with putting these two together. And for me, I actually like Alizé's character more.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it.
But Alfie has way more potential.
We're talking about do we want the story to go,
yes.
etc., etc. If it was purely based on my love of a character, like entirely, Alizé's number one.
Yeah.
By a long way, actually. I love Alizé. I've never had a moment with Alizé since the beginning of the game where I'm like...
No, she's been great throughout.
She's great throughout. Even when she just spin a coil, I remember playing a Realm Reborn, obviously playing it blind, and being like, where is Alizé? Like, it was annoying the hell out of me.
It's so weird.
Yeah, if anybody ever checks those VODs, it's like every half an hour. I'm like, where is she? Why is Alizé not here? I want to see more about her. Okay, so I'm starting here. So she's come full circle.
Yes.
Her story with her brother, which I can actually just put the other Scions over there. Alizé and Alfie's story, the story of the twins, is between them two, primarily, is how I look at it. We've gone from the Alizé who ditched her brother because although they both want the same goal, they both have massively different ideas of how to attain that goal and what needs to be done in order to make it happen. Obviously, got the more less rational, more emotionally motivated Alizé, and the more logical, researched, democratic approach of Alfie and what he wants. And both of them make a lot of mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
But that resolved in Endwalker. In a really beautiful scene. One of the most beautiful scenes of Endwalker, in my opinion.
Yeah, one of the absolute best cutscenes of the entire expansion.
Yeah, it's the twins when they're locked up, they're wearing the collars, and they're sat talking to each other, and she realizes and probably why he's moved to number one for both of us, the strength and potential of her brother. And that her real gift to the game and the game story is to support him in the weaknesses he has, which is often emotional.
Yeah.
But understanding that it's Alfie who needs to take the lead.
Yeah, for sure.
Which means in her story... okay, so obviously this is where I like the story to go. I have one path for this that I really want to see. Because I think it's so strong that trying to throw something else into the mix would suck. And that is, I want Dawntrail to test her resolve of that decision. Okay. I would love to see a story play out where Alizé's sort of older, less mature instincts lead her in one direction, but her brother wants to go in a different... So we sort of like replay that scene in A Realm Reborn.
Yeah.
And it's difficult and it's tough and there's good cause on both sides.
Yeah, it's not juvenile in the way that it was in A Realm Reborn. It's actually now well-reasoned.
It's well-reasoned. There's good context for both. That moral ambiguity that FF14 does so well.
Yeah.
That's why Emmett Salk's such a great character. It's like, I get what you're talking about, and I can totally see myself being in that same position should I have experienced what you've experienced.
Yeah.
And Alizé, I would like to see Alizé say, but I trust you, I'm going to go the other way. And I think that could be such a really good culmination. Because now she's said it, but actions speak louder than words. It's generally what my notes say, actions speak louder than words with Alizé. Because they've been together, they've been tag teaming Garlemald for a long time now.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to see. I want to see that resolve tested and actions speak louder than words. And I think if you set that up nicely with really good reasons for her to be like, she's not wrong, but she believes in him, and now there's the proof of it. Do you know what I mean? That's what I want to see out of that character.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that for sure. Yeah, I mean, her character is kind of tricky because I always sort of see her now as being like, she will be somewhat secondary to whatever Alpha No goes with, and she'll be that supporting role in that she's kind of like the sword and shield, right? That's her role, is she's the protector, she's the knight.
I would go further than that and say I see her as the balance, the yin and the yang.
Yeah, they complement each other.
They complement each other. Yeah. He won't get to his... I see what he's saying, because he will, ultimately, he will become the one in charge at some point.
Yes.
I believe that will happen. Unless they pull up a twist and kill him and then deal with Alizé's dealings.
Which would be crazy.
And I would fuking love that.
Yeah, that'd be an amazing story.
That'd be so cool. I don't think they'll ever do that. But I would be like, oh God, where is this going? But her role in that balance is to keep him on the right track.
Yeah.
And sometimes against her own baser instincts. I think that's where they're going to go with that. Rather than being like a Lucia to Emmerich. Emmeric's going to make his own decisions, and Lucia is there to bodyguard him in many respects. Even though she can make her own choices.
Yeah, I mean, she has like such complete respect for Emmerich that like her opinion almost isn't relevant, I guess, in that sense. Whereas I think Alizé, like she's of her own mind still.
Yeah, exactly. I think the difference I would say is Emmerich would listen to Lucia wholeheartedly, but may not agree.
Yeah.
Whereas I think both of them would listen to each other.
Yes.
To arrive at a decision that they both believe is correct. But at the same time, she knows that she's not a leader of people.
No.
She's not. And she's okay with that. And that's what I really liked about Endwalker. It's like she realizes that. It's like, the world needs saving. We're the young still. We're the young hope for the world in many ways. Like, I think that's a sort of a realization they're having, given what they've done in the past, is that we are the hope for the world.
Yeah.
And we can't take that with hubris and, and be egotistical about it. It's like, we need to get it right.
Yeah.
And my role is that I'm not a leader. You're a leader. I could do many things you can't. many things you can't, Mr. Firewood.
Yeah.
But this is what I can do. And it's equally as important. And that's why I've grown to love these two. Despite the fact that, of course, in my early tier lists, Alzay was always number 1, or number 2 to Y'shtola. But Alfie was always rock bottom.
Yeah.
But he's much better now.
He was rock bottom for a while. I mean, he started to get good even just in Evansward, but yes, indeed.
As you were saying.
Anyway. So yes, number 1 for both of us then is Alfie.
Do you agree with Alzay then? And were you on the same vibe?
I was, yeah, no, I completely followed along with you on that one.
And we kind of talked a little bit about Alfie. I don't know if you got more to add to that.
Yeah, so with Alphino, I've talked about this before, so I would like to see in the next expansion them age up, as I've said. I would like them to come a little bit more mature, because, aside from Graha potentially, I believe that Alphino will take that leading role in the Scions. So I see Alphino as being that leader character. He's learned through trial and tribulation everything he suffered with the Crystal Braves and going through Garlemald. Has gone through all of those mistakes to the point where now he is actually qualified to lead people when he wasn't before.
Yep.
And so I would like to see that happen. In terms of like personal development, that's kind of where I'm not super sure on where I would want them to go. I do like your idea about having them maybe having some sort of opposition. But beyond that, it's not like they have any super strong plot points set up at the moment. So whether they would go in a different direction, I don't know.
Yeah, I think my points in Alfie was similar to yours. The way I put it is he can now be a leader.
Yeah.
I want... currently, Alfie is always in the pursuit of knowledge to make the right decision. And that's because he's failed in the past. And I understand it and I get it. And he's constantly... The way I wrote it here is he's constantly searching for answers to his own failings based on what other people have done. Yeah. And it's exactly why they're going along in Dawn Trail. It's like, oh, your people brought this like Mance Raider idea from Game of Thrones. It's like you brought all these warring tribes and peoples together. How did you do that? Because we're dealing with something else in Garlemald, and that might be useful in the future. And then it'll be something else. It's like, oh, you dealt with that. How did you do that? And he's always pursuing that knowledge. And I put here, now he's in the position now where he needs to write his own story. Yeah. Which is, you will write the stories of how to resolve these things, instead of constantly falling back on how else was it done. History is important. There's no doubt about that. But at a certain point, you've got to start making decisions.
Yes.
You've got to start actually leading people, because you know that's ultimately your role. And yes, you screwed up in the past. And I always really like some sort of development where the Crystal Braves comes back up. A big... And I kind of imagine it hurts him a lot. Given the way he's constantly looking for the right answer, which is what I look at all his character points, his main ones are, is I'm looking for the right answer and somebody else must have it for me. Right? Whatever you did probably will work here, or I can take something for it. Whatever you did, I can maybe implement that in some way. Somebody else has the right answer. I don't want to make the choice without knowing that this kind of probably works. Yeah. Whereas now he needs to make some risks. And that's what making decisions is about. Like, ultimately, it's like, you can look at what other people have done, but you've got to start taking some risks and writing your own story, which is what I've put here. And I would like that. I'd like a test of those skills, and I'd like him... I could foresee... It's like I could foresee a scene of him being pushed, probably by Alzay, to, you need to lead here. You have to do it.
And he's sort of reticent to do it because of all the failings he's had
what if it goes wrong?
Yeah.
Right? That's what'll happen. When he's put in that position again of proper leadership, I can see him being like, what if it goes wrong? And the Crystal Braves comes back up, as much as it's memed on, is like, don't you understand they all betrayed us? Ravan, lost his arm. People were killed. Like, they were betrayed from the inside. These are the people I trusted. It's like, yeah, but at that time you were young. You gave them implicit faith, which is insane. You're just like, here's all the power in the world and nice, cool uniform.
Here's some money.
Here's some money. And off you go. And make a decision. And I want him to make failings along the way, but learning from that in a different way. So that was cool. So we only actually had one in mixed order. I'm amazed. Yeah. Yeah, we did do this entirely separately. One thing you wanted to bring up then...
Yes.
...was potential... Because obviously you've killed off a few characters.
Yeah.
Potential new additions to the Scions. I only have one, maybe two.
Okay, interesting. All right, so... Yeah, I really wanted to talk about this, because if I imagine that Urianger, Y'shtola and Thancred all go, which is what I think ideally would happen, that leaves a lot of opportunity for new blood. Mm-hmm. And especially if the idea is to bring up the new generation, there are some great candidates for that.
Yeah, we're not going to include... We can't just say people who are going to appear in Dawn Trail, because obviously...
No, yeah, I mean, I'm talking specifically about people who I think should become mainline characters in the future. So I've got a few here to run through. 2 pairings and then a single person.
Sure.
So my first one here is Arenvold and Fordola.
I can see that.
Yeah. So Arenvold and Fordola had a great story, obviously, back in Stormblood. You've got these 2 characters who have an interesting sort of shared history through their homeland, right? And they're both kind of this... Fordola was not mixed parent, she's native, but she was raised within the Krile side of that. Arenvold is mixed, but obviously his mother was suffered abuse at the hands of his father. So you've got that interesting dynamic. You've got her, presumably to some degree, currently taking care of him.
Yeah, they've become one. They've melded almost.
Yeah, so you've got him.
You don't get one without the other.
No, exactly. I mean, he's obviously Hot Wheels at the minute. So I'm kind of curious to see how they develop that. I think it would be great to see kind of Fordola go through more of her redemption. And not even redemption, I hate to use that word because people consider it as like a pass off for past failings. More like penance, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like she's paid for time now. She's helped out.
Yeah.
She's saved people.
And I want her to really wrestle with the things she's done, more in like a more close sense. As she kind of comes to terms with the evil that she previously did and starts to look at what she can do to make it right. And I think the Scions is the obvious place for that, as well as Arenvold maybe learning to walk again. And I can also see them potentially developing a relationship more.
Yeah, I can see that.
I see it's pretty well telegraphed even early on, is that there's some chemistry between those two, otherwise they wouldn't be in the situation they're in. So I definitely think there's great opportunity to explore that, maybe as proper Scions in the future. The other big ones for me, and this is kind of after Cross Rift Travel has come back, for me, is Reen and Gaia.
I have that on the list.
So
they're the obvious choice.
They're the obvious choice, right? Yeah. And this kind of falls in with Thancred, is the passing of the torch. Yeah. Him moving away, ideally dying, like I mentioned, and Reen becoming that character, becoming the Minfilia that they no longer have anymore.
But better, because people hate Minfilia for some reason. I liked Minfilia.
I liked Minfilia.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
but, she's the obvious candidate, which means Gaia comes along. I'd be interested to see how they mix that in. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they're the obvious 2 additions. Although Gaia, at least character look-wise, somewhat steps on the toes of Zero. You have to imagine that Zero is probably going to come back in maybe an expansion's time or whatever, and is a real candidate to be a Scion, given what we've been through.
Zero was my other one, incidentally.
Yeah, it's why we brought up Reen earlier. I think we're both on that track. Is like Reen is going to become a bigger character. She's likely to become a Scion. Yeah. Which means Gaia's coming along as well. Not that there's anything wrong with Gaia, but like they're a package deal. Maybe we have this sort of Gaia does something else at the same time, or blah blah blah. But you're not going to they're not going to break up Reen and Gaia. In both senses of the word, because people would hate that. And she's also, I will point out, I think they do pay attention to these cosplay competitions. This guy is ridiculously popular.
Oh yeah, people love that character. Yeah. And I still maintain Eden is the best raid series in terms of the story for me. I loved Pandemonium as well, but Eden is such a great story. And I want to see them develop their relationship more. Because those I would see those 2 aging up as well, along with the twins. Because I think they're about the same age as the twins. I think they're maybe like a year younger or something. Or maybe a guy is slightly older. But But I see those two developing their relationship more if Square Enix has the courage to do it.
And suddenly have some conflict.
Yeah.
Like that, I mean, that's, we keep bringing it up, but conflict is interesting. And it's what I look for. It's like conflict and resolution. I don't want them to break up or anything, but like some struggles that they have to go through together. Because they're young. People do foolish, stupid
get
things.
Get some drama in, you know.
Yeah.
And it's so obvious that they're going to be a big part of the story because I can't see you ever rectifying what's happening on the 13th without both of them.
No.
Right? Because Guy is the Oracle of Darkness. It's her world. You know, so you have to have both, in my opinion. Not that I know how the hell they're going to do it because of it being a raid series and that's not part of the main story.
Yeah, we keep bringing this up is how they bring Gaia in and whether they... apparently they did do this in the past with someone, is just introduce them. Because it's something... they didn't do it in the last part of the MSQ, which did have Reen in it.
She was optional unless you died.
Yeah, she was optional content in that context. But they could just introduce her and and here's Gaia. Go and find out in Eden, which is what the players will say. Yeah, go play the Eden raid series and you'll figure it out. Yeah. Or they could do a shortened version or something.
Do you think they'd ever make the series mandatory like they did Crystal Tower?
I don't think they'll ever make raiding mandatory in terms of a raid series. It's something they...
Because Alliance raids are a lot easier. Right?
Alliance raids are easy. They're not a big deal. They're designed to be beaten. The raid stuff you can do like unsynced, so it's not a big deal for many people. But there are a lot of people who just detest raiding in all forms. Like even the prospect of being able to solo it is annoying to some people.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
And it's something they kind of drift away from. Although they did put a lot of the bosses into the MSQ, so I don't know. I would like them to because it's a great story as well.
It is a great story. I mean, there are definitely some bosses in there that I think if you have no experience raiding and you hate it, there are definitely bosses in there that people are going to struggle with.
Yeah,
even
unless
on
they
normal
made
mode.
Could they do some sort of duty system for it?
That would work.
Yeah, something along those lines, because they've done all the dungeons now, I believe. Everything is done, so where else can this extend to? And the trials and raids are obvious ones, especially for older content.
Yeah, for sure.
On a very easy mode, like they do with the scenarios. The little duties. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, you died? That's cool. Put it on very easy if you want. We're not bothered. Yeah. We want you to experience the story. We're not bothered whether you can pass a skill check or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly things like the Alliance raids, because I recently went back and did the Nier one, because I didn't do it at the time. And getting those queues takes ages. So I can certainly see the benefits of that, making it a little less intimidating and stuff like that for people who don't raid, right?
Don't raid. The people who don't raid shouldn't be forfeiting the story, but I think it's a great story. If you like the story, you do it. If not, Gaia's introduced as somebody.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, here's my roommate. You know?
Yeah. I put Yugiri on here. I think that's another character with a lot of potential that just got left by the wayside.
I to be honest, I kind of see her as just like a character from Stormblood who will come in for a cameo.
Exactly. There's so much more there.
I don't know. I mean, I sort of get that with Brosetsu. He's a little more interesting than Yugiri for me. Side
by side, I think Brosetsu is perfect as they use him. He's got quite a rich story, like visiting the other camps. And certainly in Stormblood, you get a really wonderful situation with him. And then you got his whole story with Tsuyu, which was great. And he fits the role when he shows up and does stuff. Yugiri is always like, but I'm here. As well, like for somebody who shows up and is kind of important when she arrives to tempt you to the other world, you're like, oh, this is going to be a really cool character, and they just didn't do anything with her. But I think she's got a story to be told.
Do you think you can ever see Yugiri in game without Hien though?
Because I hate Hien.
No, I know, but she's his protector, right?
For what?
She's like his personal ninja.
Exactly. What a waste of time for what could be a really... if I'm looking for someone to add to a Scion, they need to be able to bring something to the table. She has a unique skill set. Again, in Thancred, she can replace the spy aspect of Thancred.
Yeah.
She could do that very, very easily. She's better at it, in my opinion, from what we've seen. Because remember, he didn't even see Shinryu when he went browsing around it. There's a giant mech on the back of the building. He didn't notice. But she was the only one. I will say that was a grasp. I was like, is there anybody I'd really like to be a Scion? It's like, Gosetsu, no. He's perfect as he is. Reen and Gaia are the obvious additions. That I think is going to happen regardless. Yugiri, maybe.
Do you reckon they'll do the Zero, Cecil, Cecilia.
Yeah, that'll be in the future.
The next,
I always
the
consider
expansion after this.
I consider that a tickler. They're giving her a rest now to give the Scions the growth for their new stories, and then Zero will be like, and remember me! And I could see her being a Scion. Like I said, I think Zero's got, we talked about the other one, is a potentially popular story reuniting the Scions in some way, although it's probably going to resolve there.
Yeah.
Alright, so there you go. That's what we want to happen with the Scions. Love to see your stuff down below, by the way. I'm sure you've been listening to this going, no, they should do this, and this. Love to see it.
Everyone's cooking right now because it's so open-ended.
No, the new MSQ was all ingredients.
Yeah, exactly.
It was literally all ingredients, and it was rightfully so. So, we'll see again. If there's something else that you want our opinion on and stuff like this, it only takes us an hour or so at the end of the day.
Yeah.
To try and throw it in. And we're back in the studio now, as you can see. So,
our lovely white wall with a leaned disc plate.
You'll see the developments. Bye, guys.
Bye.